name's Nicole Matish and I'm the CEO of InfoOps HQ, a military think tank specialising in influence activity in the social media battle space. In this lesson, I'll be covering some of the essential elements of social warfare, how it's been weaponised, and what tools you will need to equip yourself in the modern battle space. Well, the examples I use will be based around the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or ISIL, and their current tactics. The knowledge you will learn in this lesson can be applied to any threat or opportunity in the information environment. What if I told you social media is changing the way we look at asymmetric warfare? That as our adversaries continue to exploit technology and social media, the separation between the traditional definitions of cyber warfare and the new construct of social warfare is rapidly becoming indistinguishable. What if I told you social media has been weaponized to a point where a single hashtag is now the most valuable tool in the warfighter's non-kinetic arsenal? What if I told you this is happening right now and your battle space isn't confined to your physical AO at all? Well, Boko Haram in North Africa was the first to mobilise social media in the battle space. ISIL were the first to truly weaponize it. They were also the first to challenge the notion that social media is crossing the divide from non-kinetic to kinetic on the battlefield. ISIL's online assault is having direct and at times lethal outcomes in the physical AO. Knowing your audience is a critical element of weaponizing social media. The ability to segment your audience or break it down to the sum of its parts is essential to being able to hit your targets, and social media offers you a multitude of ways to be able to do this. What you are doing in weaponizing social media is reverse engineering the way platforms such as Facebook and Twitter have been designed to market to consumers. The planning stage of weaponizing social media is therefore an essential preemptive exercise in not only knowing your audience, but knowing your social media platforms and their capabilities. As the battle space has evolved beyond the traditional definition of full spectrum militarized dominance to include the threats posed by social media weaponization, an isolated or siloed approach to running organizational strategic communications is not only inefficient, but it's also exceedingly ineffective. A holistic approach to strategic communications across all media must now be developed in synergy, have a consistent narrative, and be preemptive to arising threats. It is too late to develop an influence profile after the first shots of war have been fired. If you use the Noah's Ark analogy, by the time you hear thunder, it is way too late to build that ark. Military strategic planning for communications and influence must now start in peacetime. This means you may not have a concrete idea of who your adversary is or where your physical AO may be. Social media has changed the way the planning cycle works. Instead of being aligned with a rotational force, for example, Stratcom, influence activity and PSYOP planners may now be in a state of constant readiness. Building an audience across their organisation, often with multiple touch points, and weaving a continuous narrative targeted to allies and foes alike is now routine business as usual. In the Israeli Defence Force example I provided on the associated slide, you can see how the impact of this communication activity would not have been possible if they had not already built their audience and had in place an avenue to break news themselves. Building your social media presence is about far more than simply activating your social media accounts. You need to consider the how in your audience reach equation. If broadcast radio is a key enabler in your potential AO, start an online radio channel or a podcast. If video is the best form of communication due to high levels of illiteracy in your AO, start a YouTube channel. You may need more than one of these broadcast tools to reach every audience segment. These non-social media tools in your arsenal are important because they build your audience and they drive your social traffic. They also give you content. The how of engagement on social media is not only driven by audience and social network demographics, but also by all the other social media networks in use. Shareability is a key driver in audience engagement. That is, your audience must feel compelled to share the messages and content that you share. both inside and outside of social media. Let your audience build your online empire for you by enabling them to share your messages easily and quickly. This can be achieved through a synergy of technology, enablers, and high-impact, engaging content. Remember, social media is not a monologue, it's a dialogue, so the ability to drive interactions is key to your success. Audiences on social media are different. For a start, they're automatically global, so knowing how to narrow down your left and right of arc into a manageable target area is essential. The fundamentals of good military public affairs still apply. You need to have a target end game in mind for your audience. What is your call to action? What is the purpose of your social media influence? How will you measure your effectiveness and in what timeframes? Understanding and segmenting your audience on social media is a critical influence planning and targeting element. Audience segmentation can be achieved by looking at cultural and religious factors, geographical locations, psychosocial influences such as public, political, or religious notable figures, demographical influences such as poverty, access to healthcare and education services, or niche cultural beliefs or superstitions. As is the diverse nature of social media audiences, you may find that you develop more than one social media target or touchpoint during this process. For example, if you want to reach young men who are predisposed to religious extremism, there are a range of social media tools you can use to significantly narrow down your target area. Using Facebook as an example, if my target was Australian young men who are predisposed to religious extremism, I could use the Facebook ads or promoted post option to reach my target. For example, I could set up a Facebook ad to encourage these men to view a video that I had produced to counter ISIL's recruitment activities. As you can see, Facebook easily steps you through the processes needed to upload your video. Facebook will then give you an example of how your video will look in a person's desktop or mobile newsfeed. Using a clickbait approach to communications, that is, a short teaser of text that compels the reader to click or view the video, you can enter the text for your ad to the side. Keywords matter here. What will appeal to your audience? What rhetoric is your adversary using that is successful? There are opportunities to clickjack, that is, hijack the social traffic from your adversary to your own field. And in this example, I've actually used ISIL's own rhetoric. And then we get into the reason why it's so essential to know your audience on social media. You can actively choose the segments of audience reach you want, from generation to ethnic affinity to languages, life events, and even interests. There are a myriad of options here, and the more you understand your audience, the better your success will be. While some of these categories, such as behaviours, are targeted to marketers, they still have application to influence activity professionals. For example, I've chosen the Use Travel app and put a time frame of within 2 weeks to a month to capture men who may be looking at travel to Syria and Iraq. It stands to reason that if a person is social media savvy, they'll be using their social media logins to access other apps, such as TripAdvisor and Expedia. The third-party interfaces capture their data and segment their social profile into marketable or influence categories even further. As your campaign runs, the analytics you will receive will again inform you as to your target precision or may provide further leads or other audience targets. This screen shows a broad overview of the kinds of data you will receive as a result of your ad or promoted post. There's a lot of information you can gather from this screen. For example, Facebook gives you access to areas such as gender, age, and the number of click-throughs, so you can actively see how many people have clicked through to your ad. On Twitter, tracking tweet-to-click summaries can be achieved using platforms such as Hootsuite, which I'll cover shortly. It's here that you can see the where on Twitter of your target audience location. For example, if we're still using my Australian male predisposed to religious extremism example, looking at this analysis of my fictional tweets, my targeting clearly isn't localized. I would therefore need to readjust the parameters of my targeting on Twitter. If you're social media savvy and has created your own hashtag as part of your influence activity campaign, tracking it is also essential. In this example, using a tool called TweetReach, I've used the IO in Action hashtag, which curates influence activity conversation on Twitter. TweetReach will give you a very detailed analysis of which accounts are engaging with your hashtag and your audience reach over a set period of time. It's really important to note here that the hashtags you can follow or track for analysis don't have to be your own. You can track your adversaries' hashtags in exactly the same fashion. If you're thinking, why are all these numbers and statistics and analytic tools important to knowing your audience? It's because once you understand how to drive your social media with accuracy, you can weaponize it with precision. It also means that you can monitor your adversary's social media campaigns with precision, giving you a tactical advantage in countering your adversary's narrative, particularly in a PSYOPs and military deception environment. The traditional aim of psychological operations, or PSYOPs, is to create a perception that creates an action in the physical area of operations. Social media provides you with the tools to create such influence enablers like never before. As to whether people believe it or not, well, that's exactly the point. In social media, the application of PSYOPs is an extremely powerful tool. What urban legends exist in your area of operations? PSYOPs and social media can be as simple as creating a good old misinformation campaign. Or you can be creating perceptions such as your military force is larger than it actually is, as ISIL have tried to do in the Middle East. It can leverage cultural superstitions, mistrust of government or local leadership. It can be used to exploit local political or religious sentiment, fanning the flames of discontent to start localised uprisings or large-scale revolutions. The power of groupthink or hive mentality on social media is phenomenal. Some cultures are predisposed to communicating in this way, which makes it an exceedingly effective tactic.
My name is Bob Wilton. I'm a journalist. I've been investigating a story about a classified government program. So what you're saying is that you were a psychic spy?
A Jedi warrior.
I'd heard that the US government was training psychic soldiers, and that Lynn Cassidy was the best of the best.
I've been reactivated. I'm on a mission.
I could come. Lynn's story was unbelievable, crazy, and completely true.
We have to dream a new America that no longer has an exploitative view of everyone. You will be a psychic weapon. Feel it, yes! You must create warrior monks who can pass through walls and see into the future.
Congratulations, Scotty. Sorry it doesn't work out between you two.
What are you doing?
Cloud bursting. Keeps me in shape. And it's gone.
Geez, you had like the whole desert to drive in, Lynn.
Please, please! Thank you for picking us up.
How are we gonna stop them? They've got guns. We're Jedi. We don't fight with guns, we fight with our minds.
Holy...
I went looking for a story, and my friend Lynn brought me an adventure.
It's okay, we're Americans. We're here to help you.
What happened?
I think I just ran him over. Oh, crap.
Lieutenant Colonel Django used funds from the project's black budget to procure prostitutes.
That's a lie.
And to get drugs for himself and his men.
Well, the hooker thing is definitely a lie.
The lesson to take away from the Hollywood movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, from a social media influence activity and PSYOPs perspective, is this. Your audience on social media is looking for a story. So be a storyteller and give them an adventure. Social media is primed for PSYOPs adventure. The mass media and marketeers have already primed the public to receive short, multiple bursts of information, narratives that follow current themes, and brand stories. People want to believe in conspiracy, particularly in audience segments where government mistrust is high and cultural superstitions are still prevalent. Social media is a perfect fit for PSYOPs and military deception activities. The opportunity to divert attention away from your adversaries has never been easier. And the more outlandish the story, the more likely it is to be picked up on social media. As we saw recently with the story about a woman who had 3 breasts, even when it was reported that the story was a hoax, people still believed it and continued on sharing it on social media. A well-planned, targeted conspiracy story can quickly overrun your adversary's narrative in cyberspace. Use those nuances of social media to your advantage. Mindless social media fodder, such as this story, can capture the attention of hundreds of thousands of people in a very short space of time. And it could be your next tactic to divert social traffic away from your adversary. It is not enough to simply have your social media audience primed and ready for action. You must have the resourcing and knowledge to maintain a prolonged campaign while concurrently monitoring your influence and tweaking your activities to adapt to the changing area of operations. You must also be able to develop new and innovative content on the fly. I will emphasize resourcing here, as this isn't an operation you can only pull off with a couple of people. It's a prolonged 24/7 offensive that requires influence activity professionals with the ability to quickly and accurately analyze and adapt and deploy new messaging to combat emergent threats. It also requires a chain of command willing and able to approve communications in a highly responsive and dynamic environment. There are numerous tools available to you to make weaponizing social media easier. Hootsuite, for example, allows you to schedule social media messages across a range of platforms in real time and in advance, while monitoring and measuring your efforts in real time. It gives you the ability to forward plan so you can monitor in the here and now. It is particularly helpful in managing multiple social media accounts concurrently, and it also has an inbuilt analytics function. TweetReach gives you the ability to measure the influence and impact of your Twitter campaigns to help you understand and improve your tweets. Mention is an app that monitors millions of sources in 42 languages across everything published on the web and in social media. It also has an analysis and reporting function. These are the kind of tools that form the basis of your social media operational capability, and you must train in them and keep your skills current to effectively exploit the technology available at your fingertips. Another addition to your online arsenal is the online platform Emergent. Somewhat like the website Snopes, both sites are real-time rumour trackers. To an influence activity specialist, this can be a particularly useful tool to measure the sentiment of your own activity and that of your adversaries. If picked up as a rumour, the topic will also give you an analysis of any counter-influence activity taking place. It is important to note that not all rumours will be picked up by Emergent. Only those trending highest on social and news media will be published online. You can, however, email them to suggest that they do track a rumour for you. You will no doubt be familiar with this photograph of Major al-Mansouri from the United Arab Emirates Air Force. This was an exceptional piece of influence and PSYOPs activity using social media as a platform to break news. Influence because it shifted the narrative away from ISIL's dominant social rhetoric, and PSYOPs because many within ISIL's militia believe that they won't go to heaven if they are killed by a woman. ISIL, of course, tried to counter the narrative by releasing statements from people purporting to be her family, saying that they had disowned her for her role in the attacks. By watching Emergent's tracking of this particular rumour, we can see that not only is the rumour considered false, but ISIL's attempt at counter-influence activity has failed. Their influence has been discredited and their credibility is subsequently diminished. The photograph and ISIL's attempt to discredit it showed that while their offensive strategy is well developed on social media, their ability to counter coalition influence activities is weak. This equates to mission influence activity success for the coalition. Other inbuilt tools you need to be conversant in to weaponize social media include the Facebook Insights element of Facebook pages. This tool can provide a lot of data, including the ability to know when your page's audience is online, and you can see the peak times people engage with you and view your posts, which means that's when you should schedule your communications for maximum impact. Also part of the Facebook Insights tab is the ability to spy on other pages or your adversaries. You can watch up to 5 other pages to see what their audience engagement levels are, either as a source of information or to gauge your own success. Whilst this is set up as a tool for marketers, it's another way you can weaponize social media and reverse engineer that technology for military purposes. As I covered earlier in the lesson, the most effective weapon you can have in your social media arsenal is a pre-existing audience that has been primed to receive and take action on your messaging. This may mean you need to proactively engage in geographical audience segments in peacetime, as well as in advance of any physical presence in the area of operations. Establishing a credible, authoritative, and positive repertoire with locals on the ground will make it much easier for your messages to be heard at times of crisis, as you've already established yourself as a credible and useful online resource. More importantly, it prevents an information void from forming, meaning that you won't be surprised by any other non-state or state actors emerging online in a preemptive strategy like we saw occur with ISIL. Remember, the main reason ISIL was so successful in their social media campaigning was that they simply took advantage of an information void and overran the social media narrative, so any other critics or adversaries were simply not heard under the deluge of messaging deployed. The impact and frequency of each weaponized message counts. Each must be high in value, high in impact, and disseminated en masse in a coordinated way. ISIL achieved this through the publication of snuff videos and imagery of beheadings and crucifixions with pure shock value. They were able to maintain their pace of breaking news by mobilizing their supporters to action through the use of their app to auto-retweet tweets, for example, and by enabling their militia to be reporters on the ground. Their ability to publish without the layers of bureaucratic clearances required within a coalition environment, for example, is a clear and distinct advantage. ISIL was not only successful in exploiting the information vacuum it created during its invasion of northern Iraq, but it did so with targeted potency. After reaching maximum audience saturation through the snuff method, they then shifted to include messaging around recruitment, ideology, organisational credibility, and political lobbying. This was a critical transition in showing the world that their ability as an organisation could be moved from enemy combatants to government state. In capitalising the historic legacy of the Levant, they are actively influencing their targets into believing their ongoing narrative, which is steeped in historical significance with strong religious overtones. Social media gives you the opportunity to break news without reliance on the traditional news media. This gives you complete control over your narrative and the ability to catch your adversaries and the media off guard. Social media by design has evolved to become the news streams in people's lives. Facebook in particular is refocusing its timeline to be a news feed, not only for your Facebook friends updates, but also on a paid news media front. Do not underestimate the power of strong leadership that translates well to video in addressing your target audience. You can see pictured in this slide Lieutenant General Morrison, or Chief of the Australian Army. More recently, a serious scandal hit the Australian Army, and he produced a video which I'll post to our Facebook group for you to view, which was intended only for internal use. Shortly after briefing the media about the scandal, he made the decision to publish that video to YouTube. It was the first time an Australian military leader had directly addressed the public in a way that broke news. It bypassed the traditional news media cycle completely. Within minutes, it was trending on social media, had its own hashtag, and the news media were using it in their own stories. It's had over 1.5 million YouTube views, 1 million of those occurring within the first week after its publication. Together with SlideShare, YouTube is the highest driver of social traffic on the internet. ISIL have used this tactic repeatedly, through snuff videos to Hollywood-style recruitment campaigns, and it is exceedingly effective. ISIL are exceedingly effective at using social media to break news, not only in their latest snuff video or gruesome images, but in their ability to have that direct impact in their forward area of operation. During the early days of their campaign, they would use this tactic to warn the next town or village what was in store for them should they resist their invading forces. There are many stories of Iraqi police and armed forces personnel simply discarding their uniforms and fleeing before ISIL arrived in their village, as the psychosocial effect of those videos and images being posted on social media had, and shared more broadly across the broadcast news media, was acutely effective in motivating people to surrender or flee. Being combat ready on social media is about joining forces with your coalition partners. You are all on the same team. Be social friends, not frenemies. Don't run counter social media campaigns or overlapping messaging within your coalition partner's area of operations. Use each other to leverage social media reach and audience engagement. Share, like, and retweet strategically. Let them assist you in building your own social village of support, just as you will assist them in building and maintaining theirs. This is a team effort. Maintain a united front. Much like the social media unrest we saw during the Arab Spring, many of ISIL's recruitment targets are actively speaking out against them. Just as we saw with Major Al-Mansouri of the United Arab Emirates Air Force, using an Arab voice against an Arab enemy is highly effective. It is a strategy the West has purposefully taken with Iraq this time around, as the area of operation has changed dramatically since the days of Desert Storm, when social media didn't play a part in the war. And after the large-scale withdrawal of coalition forces across Afghanistan in the past 12 months, many communicators have recognised that the local appetite for Western-fed media and influence activity has significantly diminished. Hashtags work to create the conversations across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Google also indexes them so they can be searched. This makes having a short, concise, pithy hashtag as part of your social media campaign essential. Your hashtag dominance, including ready-to-go content, must have a significant longevity. This takes significant resourcing and organisational resilience. Social media's place in the full-spectrum militarised dominance model has emerged. Along with your traditional air, sea, land and cyber elements, you need to align your messaging and use your assets as content. Aircraft carrier on the way? Now is the time to promote its lethality and its humanitarian capability. Fighter jets scrambled? Now is the time to promote their lethality and use footage from their missions. Soldiers on the ground? Now is the time to promote their lethality, their force and their resolve. Use your personnel when you can, creating as much visual content as you can for short burst communications on social media. Rumours have often been said to spread like wildfire, and your social media content should be designed, primed and strategically placed to do exactly the same thing to maximise influence. Get creative, newsjack where appropriate, hijack adversaries' hashtags or create compelling content of your own. The social media battlefield is a dynamic and fluid information environment. As technology changes, militaries would need to stay a step ahead of their adversaries. Influence activity and PSYOPs planners will need to continually upskill to ensure they have the ability to exploit emergent technology. The three key things I want you to take away from this lesson are: the weaponization of social media starts during peacetime operations. Do not let an information vacuum form in your area of operations, and you must know your audience segments. That concludes my lesson. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to find out more about me or InfoOps HQ, you can visit us online at www.infoopshq.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn.